What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and in this one we are talking captaincy ahead of double game week 26. Big video, lots of genuine contenders for the captaincy this week. Obviously some people are thinking about triple captaincy as well, and obviously like next week, double game week 27, probably most people are going to look at Man City players. This week there's Man City, there's Liverpool, there's Man United, Bruno Fernandes, Spurs, Kane and Son, even Calvert-Lewin people are looking at, right? And then we've even got some other matches to talk about after that. It's going to be a big video. Hopefully it's useful. Hopefully you enjoy it. If you do, please do give it a like. Hit subscribe if you're new around here. Let's jump into it. Okay, so we'll talk about Man United first, playing Chelsea away and Crystal Palace away. And obviously, in particular, Bruno Fernandes is going to be an extremely popular captain this week, as he has been throughout most of the season, to be fair, especially recently. And he's done incredible. We've all seen the stats about how, however many games he's played, he's pretty much had at least that same amount of attacking returns, if not more. I feel like this is a double game week of two halves, right? To excuse the cliche from a game of two halves, that the Chelsea game is going to be difficult. The Crystal Palace game is going to be easy, at least on paper, right? It might not work out like that. Crystal Palace got the win against Brighton, but I would say a lot of people would think they were pretty lucky to get that. You look at the defensive numbers for Chelsea, 5.72 shots in the box conceded. They've even got better over the last kind of 6 and 4. Expected goals conceded over the season, 0.86, right? That's an elite defence. Yes, Man City are better, but Chelsea aren't too far behind. And again, they've got better over the last 6 and the last 4. I've had a look at the fixtures they played over those games. Southampton, Newcastle, Sheffield United, Burnley and Wolves were 5 of the teams included in those 6. So the fixtures have been relatively easy from a defensive point of view. But even if you go back to the whole season, 0.86 is decent. And it's not just that they're a good defence, it's how this match will play out, right? It's extremely important for Man United not to lose this. They're doing really well in the league. Not going to win the league, of course. That's going to go down to Man City. But dropping 3 points to Chelsea would be big. So it's not just that Chelsea is a good defence. Man United are almost certainly going to approach that game. I wouldn't say not to lose. I don't think they'll be that negative, but Solskjaer does set up quite cautiously. We've seen that loads of times already, right? Arsenal, 2 games. Arsenal scored 1. In the other game, I think it was 0-0. The previous Chelsea game was 0-0 as well. Man City, I think they beat us in the FA Cup, but during the league, I think it was 0-0 as well. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I should have written this down. But ultimately, we do okay against the big teams in terms of not conceding too many goals, because we don't necessarily go out to full-on attack and leave ourselves open for kind of counter-attacks, from the other team. So, look, I would put this down as a 0-0. Simple as that. Could Bruno Fernandes nick a goal? Absolutely, of course he could. Could he get an assist? Could he get a penalty? Yes. But if this was any other game week where they were playing Chelsea, there's no way I'd even consider him as captain. But then you come on to the Crystal Palace game, and that looks really good. In fact, their defence has got worse over the last 6 and last 4. But they're still, even over the season, 1.52 expected goals conceded on average is awful. Again, I've looked at the teams they've played. Brighton, Burnley, Leeds, Newcastle, Wolves, West Ham. They're not teams that should make your defence get that much worse, right, over the season, apart from maybe Leeds. They're quite attacking. West Ham can be on their day as well. Crystal Palace are just a poor defence. Forget organised, deep, well-drilled kind of defenders under Roy Hodgson. Crystal Palace are bad this year, and that could be on its own a double-digit haul, like we've seen, when people captain them against Newcastle, West Brom, etc. That's what they were hoping for. So you're kind of hoping for a good return against Palace, and then to get something against Chelsea. So I think a lot of it depends on what you think of that Chelsea game, or whether you really think he can get kind of 15 plus points in that one game. Of course he can. He's done it plenty of times before. The numbers look okay. 5 shots in the box, 11 chances created. I was chatting to someone on Twitter about form earlier, and I looked at Bruno Fernandes' form. So penalty against Newcastle, and obviously he's on penalties, and Man United get a lot, so you shouldn't take that away from him. The assist, some people would say it was a dodgy assist. Then he had that great volley versus West Brom, an absolute worldie of a goal against Everton, 3 returns before that against 9 men Southampton, and then in the previous 5 games to those, 1 assist. So the form thing is interesting. I think there's a lot playing into how many returns he's got recently, but he's done it for the whole season, right? So who am I to sit here and say that it will stop in this game week? I just think you are kind of relying on just that one fixture, because the Chelsea game will be tight. I wouldn't be going near other Man United players. I just don't think there's enough upside in captaincy. If you've got them, great. They're differentials, and that Crystal Palace game looks good. But I wouldn't personally be putting my kind of armband on there. So Bruno Fernandes, always a great shout, right? If Man United score goals, he's usually involved. But I do worry about that Chelsea game. I just think there's possibly better fixtures out there. But in terms of picking the best player, Bruno Fernandes is definitely up there. Okay, so let's look at Spurs next. There's been lots of chat about kind of form in terms of Burnley and Fulham's defensive form in terms of Kane's goal-scoring form. Let's talk about it. I've mentioned it quite a bit on videos throughout this week, so it's not going to be anything new if you've watched all the videos. I'm definitely going to go through it again. So, first of all, let's look at the defensive numbers. So, Burnley and Fulham over the season, 1.34 expected goals conceded on average over the season for Burnley and 1.41 for Fulham is not very good. Then you look at the last 6 and the last 4, and yeah, you could say they're in form. The numbers have got way better. They're now suddenly completely solid defences, right? But then you look at the fixtures. So Burnley's last 4, West Brom, Fulham, Palace and Brighton. 4 teams that don't score too many goals. To be fair, over the last 6, it also includes Man City and Chelsea, who they conceded 2 to. Right, they both conceded, or they conceded 2 goals to both those teams. 2-2 doesn't sound very good, does it? That's something you wear, but you know what I mean. And then Fulham, Sheffield United at home, Burnley away, Everton away, West Ham at home, Leicester at home, West Brom away. So again, there's quite a few teams in there that don't score too many goals, but playing Leicester, even West Ham with Antonio, I can't remember if he was fit for that one, and Everton obviously with Calvert-Lewin and co. They're not bad fixtures to have done pretty well in. So I would say, has the defence improved? Potentially a little bit. Has it suddenly gone from being a pretty poor defence to an amazing defence? Probably not. It's probably sitting somewhere in the middle. And like I said, when Burnley did play Man City and Chelsea, they conceded twice. They played West Brom. I don't know how they didn't concede in that game either. And I think because you get 2 games out of it, you don't necessarily need that kind of haul of 17 points in each game. That would be great, right? 2 hat-tricks. That ain't going to happen. But if Kane scores 1 in each of these and gets a few bonus, then suddenly you're already looking at kind of 15, 16 points, whatever it might be, by only getting 1 goal in each game. And is that completely out of the question? I don't think it is, to be honest. Obviously, you want to shoot for that high ceiling, but we've already seen Bruno Fernandes doesn't have 2 easy games. If you had Palace and Leeds or Palace and Fulham or something like that, Bruno Fernandes would easily be the number 1. But that Chelsea game is just what swings it. Whereas here, you've got 2 okay defences. They're not great. They're not awful. And that could potentially be a little bit better. In terms of the numbers, like Kane and Son's numbers are right down. There's a few different reasons I would say for that. They've had some tough games recently against some good defences. Man City, Liverpool, I think was like 6 game weeks ago now. But Man City, they've played Brighton, Chelsea. Obviously, Kane missed some of these games as well. So for me, you're looking at kind of how good they've been over the season, of which they both have pretty good stats. Kane, for me, it feels like kind of game week for Harry Kane. I've pretty much said I'd always captain him over Son anyway this season, but just the way the games are going to go, if those 2 teams are going to sit back, then Kane's going to be able to get forward more. It's not going to be a case of Son on the break, right? Or even Son and Kane in a 2, because if Bale plays, it's more going to be like Kane through the middle and Son and Bale being wide. So to me, it feels like Harry Kane is the captain to go for here. Son is not a bad option. He's been great all season. Always gets points whenever he plays, okay? Hasn't done that recently, but on average over the season, he plays enough minutes, he'll get enough points, right? So it could be the kind of game week where he comes back. But I feel like that would require... I don't think Fulham are going to do it, but I don't think Burnley are going to do it, but maybe Fulham to play out a little bit and give that space to Son, but I'm just not sure that's going to happen. So for me, if you're going to captain someone from this game, has to be Kane. Son, maybe an outside shot, but I think the fixtures are better than they look. If you look past the form, and I put it like that, the form of the last kind of 4 to 6 for both Kane's goal scoring and the defences, I think there's more to it than just saying that one is good, one is bad. And I'm absolutely all over Harry Kane. Probably going to be my triple captain this week. I feel like we've probably forgotten a little bit about Man City and all of this, right? We're looking at Bruno, possibly Salah, who we'll talk about in a minute. Spurs are kind of favourites as well for captaincy, but we've forgotten about the best team in the league. They're also scoring a lot of goals. Obviously, really good defence. You could captain defender. It doesn't feel like that kind of week to be captain a City defender when there's so many other attacking options. But yeah, their attackers should be thought about. The main concern, which obviously we can talk about straight away, is will they play 2 games? And that's always going to be in doubt, right? Gundogan, I think, played 90 minutes in the Champions League. Sterling came off early, but he didn't really play that well. So how will that bode for him going forward? De Bruyne missed out, which initially I thought that's a really good thing. But then I thought afterwards, I wonder if that's because he's not quite up to fitness. Like, we haven't seen him play a 90 minute yet, I don't think, since he came back from his injury. So maybe he's one to keep an eye on if you've got him. Yeah, potentially you could go for the captaincy. I'm sure he's going to start at least one of these, possibly both. Like, when he's fit, he's about as nailed as it gets. He will get the odd rest, but it doesn't happen that often. In terms of defences, again, they're a bit like Spurs, I suppose. They're playing 2 defences which are pretty good. They're not elite, right? They're not Man City, Chelsea levels, but they're not that bad either. 1.18 expected goals conceded for West Ham over the season on average, and Wolves is actually 1.25. Both have improved over the last 6, last 4, and I would say West Ham in particular have looked like a really good defensive unit. Organised well, Declan Rice and Souček in front of the defence, and just a solid defence in general with a really good keeper too, we should point out. And that's probably something I should have said for Spurs, actually. Playing against Burnley and Fulham, both have really good keepers in Pope and Areola. So that's maybe a slight concern for them. And for anyone that skipped over the Spurs section or skipping over the Man City section, you won't hear me say that. So there you go. But yeah, West Ham are always pretty good. Looking at the fixtures, West Ham have played Spurs, Sheffield United, Fulham, Villa, Liverpool and Palace. So Liverpool, I know Liverpool haven't been quite themselves in recent weeks, right? But playing Liverpool, Villa and Spurs over that run, it's pretty good to have improved the defence a little bit. I know last 6 you're looking at 1.18 to 1.11, right? So it's not a huge improvement, but it's still not bad. And they're keeping up that fairly good defence or defensive numbers. And then Wolves have come down quite a bit. They've played Leeds, Southampton, Leicester, Arsenal, Palace and Chelsea. So again, 6 fairly tough teams in general from a defensive point of view. So it's good to see that they've improved from their own point of view, but maybe not for Man City. So I think these are fairly difficult games, but this is Man City, and it's a 2 games where I would back the attack fully just because of how good Man City are. They're going to have the ball. They've got the players to break these teams down, and as soon as a goal goes in, it could be floodgates open in either of them. The key question is who's going to play twice. I mean, looking at the numbers, you should bear in mind that Kevin De Bruyne has played less minutes over his last 4 matches, but Gundogan's still looking good. And I don't think the fact that he played 90 minutes is that necessarily a bad thing, because I think he's almost as important as De Bruyne has been over the last few years to Pep's team. And big if, De Bruyne is not quite fully fit and they're still trying to get him up to match fitness, I don't see why Gundogan wouldn't play twice in this. With Sterling, it's possibly a little bit of a risk, and for anyone else like Bernardo Silva, although he has started a lot of games for Pep, I think it's like 10 or 11 now in a row in all competitions, so he's maybe one to keep an eye on. But as a general rule, I don't like his kind of attacking numbers like goal threat and assist threat. I just think there's so many better options out there. And obviously Foden, Mahrez, you're just not sure if they're going to start twice. So I think De Bruyne is a really big differential if you're confident that he plays twice. Otherwise, we're probably overlooking Gundogan. Look what he did in the last double. And yes, the fixtures are maybe a little bit harder in this one, but I still think he's a really good shout, and so is Sterling. So Liverpool, I'm a little bit worried about because they've had all these injury concerns. We've seen them maybe not play quite as well as they can do, but then also losing Henderson. I know he's been playing in defence anyway, but I think he would have been a big pull had he gone back to midfield for these attacking assets. To be fair, looking at the numbers, they're not actually that bad, right? Mo Salah, 1.94 expected goal involvement, has come down a little bit over the last 4 matches that we've been looking at over the last few weeks. But Mane's still up there, 3.06. Even Firmino, 1.50 is not that bad. It's just whether or not you trust trust Liverpool right now. And again, like Man United, they have to play this tough Chelsea team. And I just think it's going to be a low-scoring game. In any of these games, right, Chelsea versus United and kind of Chelsea versus Liverpool, of course, right, either team could score. It might not be 0-0 in both games, but that's where my money would be. And if Liverpool can break them down, then great, right? But I'm not seeing like 2 or 3 goals. So again, you're kind of relying on that other fixture. And again, it's a pretty good fixture. Like Man United playing Palace, I think Liverpool against Sheffield United is decent. Sheffield United themselves have got quite a few centre-back concerns, and Liverpool have the players to unlock them and to get goals. So I do think that's a good fixture. And interestingly, I've said this a few times this week, Liverpool, in terms of models, right? So I'm talking about people putting together like expected goal models and stuff like that. Salah actually comes out quite well. Like, rate my team on Fantasy Football Scout, he's the highest player for this week. So he's almost like, it feels like a differential. You've got to be careful when you look at, people in the YouTube community either making comments or making content, or people on Twitter doing the same thing, making content, or generally just talking about players, because that's obviously a smaller pool than the actual overall FPL player base. But Salah is barely being talked about as a captaincy choice, right? FPL Review, I think, has him down as the best option as well this week, because I assume they're expecting a big score against Sheffield United and then possibly something against Chelsea. Not because the Chelsea game is easy, but because Salah is an elite attacker. And yes, the numbers might be down, but we shouldn't really just look at last 4 matches. We should probably look at the fact that he's been absolutely smashing it for 3.5 seasons now. Yes, you can take into account Van Dijk and Henderson and maybe Liverpool just not looking fantastic. But I think he's got 4 goals in his last 5 games. So it's not even like he's out of form either, right? So I like Salah. I like Mane in this game. I think, again, the Chelsea fixture might slightly put me off. But if you wanted to go a little bit different, but at the same time, not just go different for the sake of it, right? I mean, no one can say that Salah and Mane are bad options at any point of the season. I think they're good outside bets here. If you want to do something different without going like so crazy that it seems like a stupid punt, I think Mane and Salah could be the ones to go for. I mean, no one owns Firmino anyway, so I'm not even going to go into that. But yeah, I like them. I think it's a fairly good fixture against Sheffield United. We've got to forget about last year. They are not the same defensive team they were. And yes, Chelsea is difficult. It's at Anfield. Haven't been performing well there at Liverpool, but that can easily change around. I wouldn't pay too much attention to recent form. So I do like Salah and Mane. I'm not sure I'm going to go there myself. But as like I said, outside differential punts, decent. So I wouldn't usually talk about Everton separately, right? I might mention them in the other matches section at the end. But a lot of people are thinking about going for Calvert-Lewin, right? And I'm not saying it's a bad idea at all. So we'll look at the teams first, okay? So over the season, West Brom, absolutely awful defence, right? The worst defence in the league, even worse than Leeds, who haven't been great themselves. And then obviously we've got Southampton as well. 1.32 expected goals conceded on average is also pretty bad. And over the last 6, it's been pretty poor. Last 4, not so bad. That's probably because the Man United game gets taken out of it, and Villa as well. So they've played Leeds, Chelsea, Wolves and Newcastle over the last 4. I would say Chelsea and Leeds probably way more difficult. And obviously we saw them be really poor against Leeds as well. So they can be gotten at. They get a good 1-1 result against Chelsea, but then they lose 3-0 to Leeds. To be fair, Leeds goals, I think, were all outside the box. They weren't exactly obvious chances, but they did create more that didn't end up going in the net. So it was a good game by Leeds, obviously not so much from Southampton. And I would say right now it's a good time to target Southampton and definitely West Brom. So I can see why people are doing this. I've got to be honest, I'm probably not even going to own Calvert-Lewin this week, and that has me quite scared. Looking at his own numbers, only 6 shots in the box and 2 chances created over the last 4, but his expected goal involvement is quite high. The chances that he gets are usually quite high quality. I think he's still over 0.5 XG per 90 as well this season, which is decent. So I can see why people are going for him. The main reason I would look elsewhere is most of the time I'm usually drawn to trying to captain a midfielder. You get the extra point for the goal, extra point if they get a clean sheet as well. So there's usually an easier way to top up your points. The only kind of players that I would ever think about not doing that for, obviously there's some games where it just happens, right? Like Leeds have a double game week, so I go for Bamford. But in a normal game week, Kane is probably one of the only players that I would think about doing it for that's not a midfielder, because he's absolutely nailed on. He plays 80 to 90 minutes every single week, and he's on penalties, right? Calvert-Lewin doesn't really have that. He doesn't have penalties. He is pretty much nailed, but obviously he has just come back from a bit of an injury. So whether he would definitely play twice, I guess there's a slight concern. I've got to be honest, I don't really have a massive concern myself, unless Carlo Ancelotti says something in the press conference, to do with him not being able to play. So I wouldn't really put that into my head too much, right, about the slight concern. I think he probably will play twice, but he doesn't have those penalties. And I just feel like he's not a midfielder. He's not got penalties, so he's not as good as Kane. He's got the best fixtures, but is that going to be enough, right? We've seen him get double-digit hauls already this season against West Brom and against Fulham, I believe, as well. So he can do it. But I think a lot relies on players like James Rodriguez. Will he play in both of these games? Not so sure about that. Obviously, Luka Dean probably will, which is good. So I can see why people are doing it, and I don't hate it. But you're backing against Kane, Salah, Fernandes, right? All these really good players, and Man City as well. It's a very big call to make. And I really don't want to put people off. I'm just trying to think about how I would be thinking about it if I do it. So not only are you relying on someone without penalties to get a big score over 2 games, you're also backing against the crowd, which is not a problem, because if it pays off, that's huge. But I guess that's where the trade-off is. Do you really expect him to get more points than the other players we talked about? He's got the fixtures for sure, but most of the time his underlying numbers are not as good as all the players we talked about. They're decent, especially for his price, but they're not quite as good as those elite players, which is why his price is so much lower, right? So I like Calvert-Lewin. I think if you're going to go for that punt, absolutely, I hope it pays off for you, even though I don't own him. But I do think there's better options this week, right? And if you've got a slight doubt about his starting place, definitely don't go there. And when I say starting place, I mean like his injury, because obviously he's only just come back recently. So there you go. That is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a like and hit subscribe if you're new around here. Leave me a comment below. Let me know who you're captaining this week. Very big decision. I know I haven't talked about triple captaincy, but to be honest, don't overthink that chip, right? It's just one extra score. That's how you have to think about it. If Kane goes and gets 10 points, then if you captain him, he gets 20. If you triple captain him, he gets 30. It's just 10 extra points, right? So do not overthink it. If you think a player that you're considering for captain has a genuine chance of getting 12 to 15 points this week, then triple captain them. There's going to be other double game weeks this season, but they're not going to be big ones like this. We won't know the lay of the land when they happen, and they might not even be better options than right now. If you're not bench boosting, you're not wildcarding, you're not free hitting, and you've got your triple captain left, just use it this week. Choose the best captain and then just whack your triple captain on them. Don't overthink it, right? Because people will do that so much. But yeah, that's my advice on triple captain. Obviously, I've talked about captaincy. Let me know below who you're going for. If you want to support me a little bit further, I do have Patreon. My team reveal is already written up over there. My transfers are made. Obviously, I'll talk about that again on the deadline stream tomorrow as well. If you want to tune in for that, around 10:15, that will probably be. And I'll also be doing at least one watch-along this weekend, probably for my triple captain. Because I just think that'll be fun, or not if he blanks, but I'll be putting that up as well, and obviously I'll tweet about it and put it on Instagram, so make sure you're following me on there. Thank you to everybody that has signed up to Patreon. You're absolute legends. Loads of you signed up now, well over 250 people, so if you want to check that out, make sure you do. Link in the description below, and obviously I'll give you a shout out next time we do a video once you sign up. I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching. Please give it a like, hit subscribe if you're around here, and I'll catch you soon.